What's up, everybody? It's Gavin here with NBA Real Talk. I'm here with my boy, Super Mario Hoops, one of the best content creators on YouTube. Seriously, you guys got to check this guy out. He's talking about some of the most unique stuff out there. You're not going to find anybody else like him out there on YouTube. And as usual, we got another topic coming up for you guys today. The topic of today is to make an all NBA toxicity team. I've been going around to certain videos about certain players, put my little comments up about what I think about them and how toxic they've been. And I thought, this is an interesting topic to sort of be like, we have all NBA teams for all these different categories, defense, scoring, and we put our own together as fans. And I thought, why don't we put together just the worst combination of teammates you could possibly think of to play together?
Yeah.
What do you think, man?
I think this was, honestly, I feel like some of them were kind of easy to choose, but I don't know. I'm excited to get into this.
Do you think you have some surprises that are going to come up on your list?
I think two of them might be surprising. Well, one of them should be surprising. Two of them might be surprising. So. Okay,
cool. I think I might have one semi-surprise. And basically what I noticed about my list is I'm pretty sure all the players I was picking were over 30. So sort of like, because I think whether it's not to say he's toxic, but maybe like a John Morant type guy, you think, okay, he's screwing up big time, but he's young. He's got time to grow from that. So I think a lot of my guys have a reputation. So it's relatively positionally matched. I believe the new NBA all NBA selection rule is three. You can do like 3 guards and 2 forwards, or 2 guards and 3 forwards, or something like that. So I'm pretty on par with that. So we're gonna start at the point guard position. And my first pick is Kyrie Irving. I think, and this is an important thing because when I do make this comment, people always inevitably mention, I don't think he's a horrible person or something. You know what I mean? But as a teammate, as a guy on your team, I think he's one of the most cancerous players I've seen in my lifetime. And I think it's a very interesting juxtaposition because I'm a diehard Allen Iverson fan. Like, I grew up living and dying by Allen Iverson. And you can obviously see a million correlations already between Kyrie and AI, but I got no patience for Kyrie. And I think he's just this guy who leaves a path of destruction everywhere he goes. He just leaves it in his wake. And every time, it gets brought up in the media or something, he acts like he's just been minding his own business and everybody's, causing him problems and giving him drama. And I just think Kyrie Irving is someone who cannot play winning basketball, with a caveat, unless he's with LeBron James. Kyrie Irving plus LeBron James, I believe, is a winning combination. I believe they can win championships, and they have won championships. Kyrie has a lot of things going for him. His talent is limitless. He's a clutch player. He wants to take the big shot, and he can make the big shot. We've seen that proven time and time again. But his reliability is already in question. He is just so incredibly, I think of things like the exit interview from when the Nets got eliminated from the playoffs. I believe they got swept by the Celtics, right?
Yeah.
So, for a guy who wasn't around most of the last year and a half, however long the mandates were, and I know it's like a political thing. I don't think they should have been. I didn't agree with that, him being stopped from playing because of mandates. But any other guy but Kyrie, I'm just like, okay, that's his thing, that's his choice, whatever. You're standing up for whatever he wants to stand up for. With Kyrie, I was like, really? Like, this guy again? The guy who kind of is like, always kind of look like it. Sometimes it seems like he's looking for a reason not to play. So between his antics, his unreliability, and his I think the way he talks about his team, like what he said about Steve Nash, and they don't need a coach, or the way he, like I said, that exit interview, and the way he talked for a guy who wasn't there half the year, talking about his team, like how, we're the cornerstones and we got to construct it and all this kind of stuff. I just think Kyrie's no good to have on your team if you want to play winning basketball. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with a lot of the points you said, and that's a big reason why I have Kyrie for my point guard as well. So, I mean, I will echo, a lot of the stuff that you said, but even to add on to that, like, I think we also got to consider, like, when he was kind of one of the only people like standing against like the bubble and like when they wanted to continue the season. So like that's just another thing. I mean, like that's kind of just the NBA's way of trying to figure out a way to get around something that's not going to happen in the rest of our lifetime probably. And then also like just like I think the promises that he made, where it's like, you know, obviously he told that one kid, he's like, I'm not going to leave Cleveland. I don't really care about that, because that was years in advance. And what are you going to tell the kid? You know what I mean? But when he spoke to Boston saying like, I'll be back here, I'm re-signing. He spoke to, you know, Brooklyn saying that he'll be there. And obviously now in Dallas, it's like, yes, he did sign with them, but like, we don't know what's going to happen. There's been a new thing every year from last year with the like the anti-Semitic tweet that got him suspended. And then like, obviously like the whole Steve Nash thing, like you said, and obviously the mandate, like keeping him out of like home games and really all games for like the first half of the year. Like that's, you just don't want a player on your team that you can't count on. And I feel like Kyrie, for much of the last half decade, has been someone that you just can't count on, whether he's going to be out there or, you know, something to that degree. Like it's always something comes up, and I don't think a lot of teams want to take a chance on that personally. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I just want to piggyback real quick on some stuff you mentioned, like the Boston stuff. Remember when the fan, like I think they threw something at him or whatever. Like, so that's a classic example of a Kyrie situation. The fan should not be throwing. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not sticking up for that fan. I'm saying, you know, Kyrie comes back to Boston, this place he said he was going to stay. The team did better without him. He leaves. He comes back and he's stomping all over everything. And you know what I like? He's this guy who draws all this drama. Like, he sort of, instead of saying intentionally, I'll say he knowingly behaves in a way that will bring him drama. And then just puts his hands up kind of like, oh, you guys, and all that stuff. And yeah, like you said, with the tweet and stuff like that, this is one of Kyrie's downfalls. Is he is a good person. He is a smart person, but he thinks he's too been smart for his own good. So it's like that whole drama comes up. It's like, Kyrie, this is real simple. You just say, hey, no, I didn't mean to, you know, you just give the simple answer, right? Oh, I screwed up, whatever. Everyone's going to forgive you, man. You know what I mean? You just say, hey, didn't realize. But instead he's got to go into this ramble about, oh, how could I be this person if I'm not? It's like, no, Kyrie, you know.
And I think just to add on to that, because I completely forgot about it until you were talking about the Boston series again. And like just doing stuff that like you don't have to do. Like I remember this guy went on his Twitch and he was playing 2K and he just started like, I don't know if you remember this, but he was like just rambling about stuff like all throughout the past and like just talking about like his whole situation, trying to like justify everything. It's like, if you had just said like, you know what, like I was in the wrong here, I was in the wrong there, or just like, you know, let stuff go sometimes, like I feel like people will be more willing to accept that, you know what I mean? But like he just keeps like bringing it up more and like it just keeps like adding fuel to the fire. So that's just another thing.
The main way I would describe it is, say, like you said, whether it's the bubble not wanting to play, the vaccine stuff, it's like one of those people where it's like, okay, this guy just doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt anymore. You know what I mean? Like, he's just being dramatic and screwing around. So I think we could talk for hours about that, but we've exhausted the Kyrie side as far as we can. So moving on to shooting guard. I've got James Harden. I got James Harden up there because I think he's a little bit of a choke artist. I don't know if that's going to be controversial or not. I didn't realize Harden had so many fans when you talk about him, but apparently he does. He is a great player, don't get me wrong. I think he kind of runs from challenge a little bit, or runs from adversity a tiny bit. Not his entire career, but just at times in his career. And just honestly, this isn't so much a toxic for the team, but it's just like his foul baiting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think if you're a fan of the game of basketball, you're not a fan of, but you can appreciate good foul baiting to an extent. Like Kyle Lowry, you know, the way he'll take a charge, you know. But I remember, if I was to say compare foul baiting to like the 90s and 2000s, you know, the pump fake, get the guy in the air, then go up and get him, or you're on the fast break, but you slow down at the last second so he bumps you. Now, just like Harden literally grabbing people's hands and slapping himself with them and all the other stuff he's come up with. He's not a guy I want, again, not a guy I want on my team for winning basketball. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I agree with this one. Now, I think my small forward will be different, but I think I agree with you that my shooting guard is also James Harden. I do have James Harden there too. I promise it will get different. I think the small forward will be different, but at least for Harden, like, and I heard someone use this term. I'm not one personally, but they use a term where it's like, only child syndrome in a way, where it's like basically a player or like just a person, like they have to like get what they want, and like that doesn't apply for everyone, but it's like everything is like, you know, built for you essentially is like the term for, I guess, like the people that like exaggerate that feeling. And I think over the last 4 years or so, like ever since you know, really even the last year that they had Chris Paul and the Rockets, and it's like he's like, I know what we need to do, and then boom, Chris Paul gets sent out, they get Russell Westbrook, and then John Wall comes in, he's like, I want out, you got to get me to Brooklyn. He got to Brooklyn. He's like, I want out, I want to get to Philadelphia. He had to get to Philadelphia, and now look at where we are. He wants out. And I mean, I know this kind of mentioned that the Clippers have been like interested. I don't know if that's like the biggest one that he wants, but the biggest thing is that he wants out. And I can assure you, he's not going to find himself in Philly for that much longer. You know what I mean? But you know, and granted, in this current situation, maybe Daryl Morey, there is like some fault there, just because of like, if there was something agreed on behind the scenes, then maybe like it's a little bit like misleading to Harden. But you just can't deny, like, when someone's a constant in like all these situations for all these years, it's like it's gonna be toxic. I mean, think about, I still don't get really why he wanted to leave Brooklyn, because I know Kyrie, like, he missed the first half of the year, and we just talked about Kyrie, but then he came back, and obviously Kevin Durant got healthy, but James Harden still wanted out. You know what I mean? So like that could have been a championship team. Remember the year before, like
on that one, just because of the drama, you know.
Yeah. But even then, like,
you know,
they could have been a championship team. Remember, they were only like 1 inch away on a Kevin Durant sneaker from beating the Bucks, and that was with no Kyrie, and that was with really part of Harden, because he wasn't 100% healthy. So putting them all together, like, I would have thought they're at least going to try again, but he was not having it. And clearly, even though they did get swept that year, it's like all those games were close. Like, I think a James Harden could have definitely like changed how that went. And you saw that Boston team go to the finals. They had the Warriors down. They were 2 wins away from a title. So like, theoretically speaking, like they could have pulled it off, but it just seems like he wants his way, and he changes his mind within like a year's time, essentially, or not even that sometimes, over the last 4 or so years. And for that reason, like, you don't want a guy that's, you know, it's like his vision is going to change from where the team's vision is, and that's why he's going to make my all toxicity team. So yeah.
That's really interesting. We pretty much agree right off the bat, first two guys. And yeah, piggybacking off that Daryl Morey situation, I think it's just a classic scenario where I just don't feel particularly sorry with either of them. You know, I basically, James Harden has done some, you know, let's just call it rough business, you know, over the last few years. And I think when you do business that way, you know, you might, you know, catch the back end of it. And if Daryl Morey tried to do some business that way, well, guess who he was doing, even if they were best buds or whatever. And I'm one of those people, like, it kind of reminds me of like the rap beefs of the 90s, like East Coast, West Coast. I never put it past anybody, even in sports, to like, you know how Kobe and Shaq said their drama was like kind of like made up a little bit towards the end. I was like, I never put it past any of these guys to create distractions or anything just for media buzz. So that might be the case. Who knows? Anyways, so we agree on the first two. We're moving on to small forward. So I got basically a slightly interesting choice here. I'm actually going with Kevin Durant. I'm putting KD on this list for basically more or less one reason. He's just too sensitive. I think KD is, you know, like a baller's baller, whether he's happy, unhappy, this, that, whatever he wants, he's going to play. He's never going to question his dedication to his game or his effort. But I think it's so interesting what you said about James Harden with the only child syndrome type thing. Just something similar to Kevin Durant, where it's like, you know, he is a good teammate, he is a good player, but it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like people by this point must feel like they're walking on eggshells around him a little bit. It's like, don't make KD unhappy. He might ask for, you know what I mean? Like, but like he seems like this guy that you can push a little because he just wants to play, no matter how bad the situation is. But he just is, his need to engage, you know, Twitter-wise and stuff like that, and defend his own legacy, I just feel like has turned him into a bit of a whiner. And he just seems like this guy. It's not like Kyrie, but it's kind of like KD. You can't make these kind of decisions and just tell everyone to shut up and leave you alone about it. You know what I mean? If you just made the decisions, right, and didn't talk about them at all or try to defend yourself or anything, then maybe you have a point. But because he feels the need to defend going to Golden State and, I don't know, defend anything else some random kid in his mom's basement says about him on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, I just think, like, I don't think he's actually a super toxic player, but I think his potential to turn into a toxic, like, put it this way, he can easily turn a situation toxic in a split second. You know what I mean? I think Brooklyn, thankfully, all in all, is pretty much better off than where they were before Kyrie and KD showed up. So I don't think they're all that worse for wear, because until they showed up, obviously them being, you know, the big three, Kyrie, KD, and Harden, I thought the Brooklyn Nets had a nice trajectory with the team they had, and this interrupted it kind of in a good way. And then when it all got broken up, it's like kind of like poor Brooklyn, or not really poor Brooklyn, but you know what I mean? That all went down the drain, and I think they got a little bit of that excitement back about our future. But all in all, I think KD has kind of made a couple situations a little toxic on his way out the door. So that's my small forward pick, my third pick anyway. What do you think?
So my small forward pick is also Kevin, but it is not Durant.
Oh.
No, I was trying to throw you off. It's Kevin Porter Jr.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the reason I'm going with Kevin Porter Jr., well, I guess first of all, so I guess I didn't pick Durant necessarily because I know obviously like he did request a trade like last year and stuff like that. And I know he's more focused on like just basketball and stuff. He is sensitive. I can agree with that. I just don't know if like to the same degree, like it hurts a team like Kyrie and Harden. But I think the reason why I picked Kevin Porter Jr. is, you know, this guy started off in Cleveland, clearly had, as they labeled it, as like anger management issues. He had locker room problems. I think he even got suspended for a game. And then even the same thing a little bit with Houston. I don't think he's been suspended for it, but like he's had his fair share of like anger management issues, I guess, behind the scenes. At least that's what the rumors are saying. And I feel like personally, like as a player on the court, it's toxic to have him because I don't feel confident with him taking a majority or the bulk of my team's shots. Like, I'll throw it back to like I don't even, this is going to be a crazy stray to Ricky Davis randomly, but like I'm just trying to think of like a player that like from back in the day that would like take all the shots regardless. Like he didn't care about like passing like that. And I feel like personally Kevin Porter Jr. like maybe takes more shots than he should. And in terms of between the lines, that's where it hurts the team, especially when we're already looking at a Rockets culture that like people have already labeled as like, you know, toxic in itself, or like bad vibes and straight up just a negative culture, like it's spiraling downward, even though they're already horrible and you think they'd be in perfect position to tank. But at least for like Jalen Green, I mean, he's shown a little bit of strides over the last couple years, and he's playing for, you know, FIBA now. But and then like I'm pretty high on Şengün. I just don't know if I feel the same way about Kevin Porter Jr. And given like the stuff that's happened behind the scenes already, I don't know how I trust him, especially in this role. You know, if he's willing to accept like a backup role somewhere and like maybe give like 10 to 12 points a game off the bench, and like I said, like accept his role, then maybe this could be adjusted. But for now, I mean, he is young, so maybe that's part of it too. But I think for right now, I'm going to have to put him on my all toxicity team.
I mean, that's an interesting choice. I think you make some good points. I think maybe it's just one of those things because he's still young, and that's just a young and growing team. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I mean, obviously I heard some things, but what you mentioned, like I think it just maybe went a little under the radar because it's just sort of typical stuff from a team that's losing that nobody cares about, full of young guys who are going to screw up. But I mean, I can't argue with your choice. More like I'd say, give him time. You know, give him time. I appreciate that Ricky Davis comparison because it does paint that picture of kind of like, oh, talented guy. What does it get for you? You kind of win with him or lose with him, but it seems like you're losing all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you make a good point, but yeah, I didn't even think about him. Did Kevin Durant come across your mind?
Kevin Durant did come across my mind, and I had a feeling like, I mean, I was definitely thinking about him because, like, we know, you know, Kevin Durant from the social media side of things and, like, obviously the stuff that he says. I just don't know if it's, like, quite as controversial from, like, a team building standpoint. Like, I feel like where the Sixers are right now with the Harden situation, like, they're super confused. You know, like where even the Mavericks are right now, like even buying into Kyrie, there's still a huge question mark. But I think we can all agree that like the Suns next year, whether they win a title or not, it's like even with Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, which I'm not too big at that pairing, like they're still going to find a way to make it work to the extent where it's like they're going to be competing, you know?
And if Durant comes up to you and he's like unhappy and he asks for a trade and makes it public or whatever, you can still be like, well, I work on it. Could give me 30 tomorrow and keep trying. And he can be like, yeah, I'll play. So, I on that. All right. Moving on to power forward. This is where I got a bit of an interesting choice, maybe. I went with Draymond Green. So Draymond is obviously like the heart and soul of, the Golden State Warriors. His basketball IQ is very high. He's a very highly rated player at certain things, there's no doubt. But the way I see it, he has kind of cost them, arguably at least, 2 potential good playoff runs or good championship runs. It's hard to say that about 2020 because, Clay and Steph getting injured and stuff. But I think, him punching Jordan Poole like that, I feel like punched them out of a title shot. And in a sense, to an extent, it sounds like even KD says what happened with Draymond with calling him the B word and whatever it was on the bench there. I think that at least I think KD has said that at least contributed, if not like that's when he made up his mind or something like that, to leave Golden State. So this is another situation where it's like, sometimes someone's best qualities can be the worst qualities at the same time. And I think Draymond is he's so good for them because he's for them. But without them, I think he's basically like a starting caliber player, kind of at best. And he's someone who kind of, Clay's pretty confident, Steph is humbly confident or whatever. Draymond's kind of like the guy talking all the trash for them. And he's writing all these checks that his team has to cash. Because we've seen with that, and I'm not trying to rag on just the simple fact that he's a system player, but like we've seen, it's like, dude, if your guys aren't here, like you can't even just like give your team like 15 and 10 or something on bad shoot. Like you can't even like try to half-ass be the guy. You're no good without these players. You're the one hyping up your whole team. You're the one punching out your college-age teammate. You know what I mean? Like, and part of the reason I even call him toxic is because he is a good player, and I don't like him. So it's one of those guys where it's like I don't even like to admit it, but he is a good player. So many people come to I can't believe how many people defend him. I was like, you're acting like this is the only person he's ever hit. This guy runs around the league stomping on heads and hitting guys in the nuts. You know what I mean? And we all saw the video. I mean, yeah, we can talk about, put your hands up, or whatever Jordan Poole said. Like, he sucker punched him. You know what I mean? People can say that's not a punch. It's like, he got in his face. He pushed him off. He was looking away. He came up and hit his own. And, like, don't get me wrong, everyone's a grown up. But it's like, I think about, like, you're like the 33. He's probably close. He's like 34-ish, 33, 30 some odd plus year old veteran. You got this, what would that be? Jordan Poole's third year last year?
Like third, yeah, or something.
Yeah, so it's like, and you're knocking this guy out in practice. It's just like, to me, he's not in the same way, but like I said with Kevin Durant, that it's fine, but there's just the potential for it to turn on its head. That's the way I see Draymond. I see him as a volatile guy that can have this very, very toxic effect. And the problem with that is unlike a guy like KD, where A, you can deal with it, B, he's still going to come through. It's like when Draymond starts screwing things up, I feel like it just kind of costs his whole team and he's not worth it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know you said it was a hot take, but I feel like honestly it was the right take. Because I do agree here too, that I think Draymond is the power forward for the All Toxicity team. Just as you said, like he's a player that obviously on your own team, it's like he's one of those guys. Like, I mean, I know it personally as a Bulls fan. Like our guy was Joakim Noah, where it's like if you're a fan of every other team, you hate Joakim Noah. Like he's just the guy you hate. But if you're a Bulls fan, you love him. And Warriors, that's like the same thing. Like I'm sure, like I'm not really a Draymond Green fan. I'm sure you're not either, being that you're not a Warriors fan. But Warriors fans probably do because of what he's done for them. But at the same time, it's like you can't deny 2016 and like basically that he cost them a chance at another championship, probably would have been the most important championship too.
Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
So Cleveland, and then chasing KD out of town. So sorry to interrupt, but like 3 potential good runs.
Yeah. So, and that as well. And then the difference too, because I was also contemplating between Draymond and a guy who was not in the league last year because of an off the court thing, and now is back in it with Miles Bridges, just because of like that's just kind of a weird situation. But I think the reason I went with Draymond Green is because I think from the Hornets players' perspectives, like obviously everyone knows what happened, but I feel like in like a team bonding thing, like if they go out to eat like with the guys or something, or if they're like playing on the court, I don't know if they're really gonna be thinking about that aspect of him. Whereas it's like Draymond Green, it's like, oh well, there's probably young players, like there's been reported young players on the team that just don't like him, and Jordan Poole was one of them, right? So like, and that's something that I think would kind of trigger more so like long term. And he could either be your best friend or he could be your biggest enemy. And maybe the more important players on the team, because they've had better memories with him, like Curry, like Clay, you know, those guys, like Kevon Looney or Wiggins or something, like those guys will probably be more on board with him. But thinking about these other guys too, like on the bench or like the younger guys and stuff, I don't know if they're going to be on board with him either. So I think like for all the reasons you said, alongside with that, I'm gonna put him on my all toxicity team because he's a very polarizing player for sure.
And just when he's sitting there yapping, it's just like he's got such a face, you know? Like easy.
He talks way too much.
But I mean, no doubt, it's part of what makes him an effective player. But you got the yin and the yang there. All right, so that's very interesting. We've agreed on 3 out of 4, even the first name on 4 out of 4. My final, it's sort of like a technicality pick that I can put him here, but my center is going to be Ben Simmons. You know, I considered a few different options, but I just thought, and Ben Simmons, I believe, is probably the only player I have on here who's kind of youngish. Like I think he's 26 or younger, like he's under 30 anyway. But I just think the bottom line is he's just so mentally weak. He's just so mentally weak that it affects your team. Not in the same way, but similar to that KD effect of just like you worry about how something's going to affect him and stuff. He's a guy who honestly I'm not counting out yet. I'm really not. I think you can write the last year and a half or so off to a combination of injury, mental problems and stuff. But I've never seen a player in my life who failed at such a simple this guy, all he had to do was shoot the ball. There was no pressure to make a single shot he took. You know what I mean? There was no pressure to start jacking up threes all the time or something. It's just like, dude, you just need to be an offensive threat and maybe work on your free throws and get those above 50%. How about that? You know what I mean? But I just think he's so mentally weak that it's just such a drag on his team. And part of that mental weakness is what he's unwilling to do physically in the game. And he's someone who, despite his shortcomings, can be such a contributor. But the bottom line is when you're a one-dimensional guy like he's become, like he very much always has been, the league figures you out. And it figures out how to stop you. And I can't remember which player said it was, something about Ben Simmons is overrated unless he's in the open court, like overrated half-court player or something. It's kind of true. You got to show people 5 or so years into your career that you can add something different to your bag or dramatically improve on something you're already good at. You know what I mean? He's got defense, which, you know, you're 6'10" and as athletic as him, you would hope he has, but I'll give him that even with his physical gifts, he is an elite defender. But he's just so incredibly delicate in the mind to be around. I think it's especially after the last 2 years, it's impossible not to have him as a toxic presence. But I guess it depends on how significant you think he is and how relevant he really is to his team at this point. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think honestly the last point you brought up is kind of so I will say I don't have him as my center on my team, and I think the last point you hit on is kind of the biggest reason why. Just because I think 2 years ago, if we were making the toxicity team, he would, you know, definitely, like, he'd be probably the biggest presence there. But, like, just over the last 2 years, like, he's been, I think, out of the picture. And I think it's gotten to a point where it's like the team, they're not counting on Ben Simmons being the Ben Simmons of old anymore. Like, I think everyone is kind of like, they've let the ship sail. We saw how he played this year, even when he was playing. And it's like, we weren't impressed. So I think most people have kind of already like given up on him. And so because of that, like if he's missing time for like getting like, you know, physical therapy or whatever it may be, like he's just not going to be around them enough that I feel like most players won't be as impacted by it. And I guess in his defense, I mean, I think Mikal Bridges said like this summer that like he was doing good and that he's like on his side, and like it seems like some of the players on the current team right now are on his side, so I will give him that. I think the contract is still definitely like ugly, for sure, but
has this toxic presence. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
the contract is probably the worst part of it right now, but I feel like just because most people aren't expecting that out of Ben Simmons anymore, that's why I probably wouldn't put him on here, just because of his, like, I guess, relevancy to the team. But my player does kind of have an influence with a team, a pretty important team, as well this year. And I know it's not all on him, but I'm going with DeAndre Ayton as my center. And so we saw the back and forth with him and Monty Williams like the last couple years and stuff, but you know, and granted, like maybe Monty wasn't like 100% in everything he did, like maybe benching him or stuff like that. But I mean, if you're DeAndre Ayton, like this is a guy who was a first overall pick, and it just shows like his work ethic or lack thereof, like for a guy of that caliber. I mean, when he came out of the NBA, he was well and above everyone thought the best player in the draft. Then after his rookie year, it's like, okay, Luka had a better rookie year, and Trae Young. And then now you see, oh, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander takes that leap above him. And then now you got other guys like Mikal Bridges, who was literally his teammate, and Jalen Brunson. You know what I mean? And like all these other players throughout that draft, like you could argue he's probably not even a top 10 player from that if you did a redraft in that class now, just because a lot of other guys have taken that next step. And while he's kind of remained constant, like he hasn't taken the step I think people have thought by this time. Like we're going into his 6th season next year, and a lot of these other guys already have. So that's the first part. And the second part is I think he's just kind of been like lazy. And at least for like me, like lazy players, like that definitely brings down the atmosphere of a team, especially a team that made the finals one year, had the best record in the NBA another year, and probably was the favorites to win it this past year when they added Kevin Durant. So that's 3 years where you're supposed to be great, and it seems like every single year, like, you know, there's just been some like underlying friction. And on top of that, like that doesn't even include like I think when he got suspended for, I think it was like
right?
Yeah, like for 25 games his second year in the league. So that's definitely going to take a toll on your team. Like, and this is why I said too, like with Ben Simmons, like, yeah, like a couple years ago for sure I would have seen it, just because like, oh, Ben Simmons is like he's like the B to Embiid's A, right? Whereas DeAndre Ayton, like at that point, it's like outside of Devin Booker, it's like he was the next biggest part of the team. And especially, like, I think they got a huge win opening night. People were high on him. They were playing well to start that year, too. And then, sorry. Yeah, so, like, just to say, like, yeah. Wait, hold on. Sorry. Yeah, they were playing well to start that year, too. And then, you know, you lose DeAndre Ayton, and then all of a sudden, like, their season's basically over. So there's just been too many instances like that for Ayton, and hopefully he can turn it around. I think Frank Vogel said he's already going to try and have like a man-to-man type of like connection with him is the biggest thing. So that's a good sign that he's trying to get on his good side. But especially if this doesn't work out with Ayton, like I think he's going to definitely have like a presence on an all toxicity lineup or something like that down the line.
That's an interesting pick. He didn't really cross my mind, but I know like I think like I said, I think it's just a lot of the young guys, you know. I just sort of like think like, you know, the rough edges, the working things out and stuff like that. The one thing I'd give him is that I think it's like it's been hard for him to find his place on the team, even back when he was like this. Basically, he was like the main guy next to Booker. You know what I mean? And it's like I think he's had trouble finding his place in the offense. There was those clashes between him and Monty in the playoffs last year. I think didn't Monty in their finals run bench him at one point for like a fourth quarter or something like I can't remember. He benched him for something at some point.
I think it was in the Mavs series, like
not
this past year, but the year before.
Oh, this next year when they got eliminated, right? Yeah. So he's someone like I see the potential for attitude problems, and without it's like it's sort of like a baby version of a DeMarcus Cousins type situation, maybe, where the talent is there, but is he getting used properly? I think, for example, I think anytime a player has to go out to come back and get his money, like he did with his contract situation, I mean, business is business, but at the end of the day, you want the best out of a player, usually you got to make him feel wanted. So part of that is also going to be growing up on his end. So that's an interesting pick. I'm gonna look at that pick on your end. I'll say I think he's he's still got potential. Still got potential to be less toxic.
For sure.
And he also has potential to be more toxic. So hopefully he goes the former, not the latter.
Right.
So we got our list. That was pretty interesting. How much we agreed and yet how much we differed on a couple of them. That was awesome. Another great talk with Super Mario Hoops 24. This is Gavin with NBA Real Talk signing out. We'll talk to you guys next time.